Welcome back, everybody, as we continue to look into Battle for Baldur's Gate, the Commander Legends Part 2. This is a set releasing on June 10th, but it's pre-releasing on the weekend of June 3rd. So I'm going to get into a little bit more caffeine here, and then we'll pick back up where we left off, which is today's released cards, starting with the red ones. We'll start with the Amethyst Dragon, a 6-mana 4/4 dragon. It has flying and haste. It can go on an adventure at sorcery speed for 5 mana. It has explosive crystal, which that it deals 4 damage, divided as you choose among any number of targets. Okay, it's not a lot of damage for 5 mana, especially split up, but it can kill 4 tokens that are 1/1s. So that is pretty good. It can kill these 4/1 skeletons with menace that are being created in this set, it seems. So I can definitely see a lot of synergy here, or I guess anti-synergy. A lot of response happening to other things that we've seen. Next, we have the Blood Boil Sorcerer, a 4-mana 3/3 human shaman that whenever it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative, and it has Crown of Madness for 2 mana, sacrifice an artifact or creature, and goad target creature. Okay, not too bad, not exciting. I think it's probably not worth it for the 4 mana, but taking the initiative is nice, so it's good in a dungeon delving deck for sure. Alright, next we have Breath Weapon, a 3-mana instant, deals 2 damage to each non-dragon creature. That's pretty good. I like this card. It can be a board wipe for tokens, so that's nice. Alright, next we have Caves of Chaos Adventurer, a 4-mana 5/3 human barbarian. It has Trample. When it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative, and when it attacks, exile the top card of your library, and if you've completed a dungeon, you may play that card this turn without paying its mana cost. Otherwise, you may play that card this turn. Pretty standard for red. It combos really well with dungeons. I think this card is good to run in a red deck, and it's good especially to run in a dungeon delving deck for sure. Next we have Coronation of Chaos. This is a 3-mana sorcery. Up to 3 target creatures cannot block this turn, and they are all goaded as well. So that is pretty good. I like that card. Next we have Earth Tremor, a 4-mana instant, deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the number of lands you control. It reminds me of, I think, Seismic Wave, which was back in the day, I think it's like a 2-mana spell, and it dealt damage equal to the number of mountains you control. What's really good about this one is that this is like an upgraded card, where now it takes into account that you're not just running mountains, you're doing multicolored decks, and they're incentivizing the multicolored decks in this set in particular with backgrounds happening. So I definitely think this is a good card. For 4 mana, you definitely want to make sure you're dealing quite a bit of damage, because remember, Flame Slash, which is a 1-mana sorcery, deals 4 damage. Instant Speed, which is what this is, we're used to 1 mana dealing 3 damage. So yes, 1 less damage per mana, but we're still looking at about that ratio here. So you want to deal quite a bit of damage. You should be killing a huge threat at this point. Next, we have a Hoarding Ogre. This is a 4-mana 3/3 ogre that whenever it attacks, you roll a d20. On a 1-9, you get a treasure token. On a 10-19, you get 2 treasure tokens, and on a crit success, you get 3 treasure tokens. Okay, so it kind of pays for itself. Otherwise, though, it's quite slow. Good for treasure synergy. If you're not having something to combo with treasures, though, and it is just mana to you, then this isn't a good enough card to run. But I could definitely see this being good where treasure creation is doing something else for you than just giving you mana. Next, we have Ingenious Artillerist, a 3-mana 3/1 human artificer, which is whenever 1 or more artifacts enter the battlefield under your control, it deals that much damage to each opponent. Well, talk about some treasure token synergy right here. Every time you create a treasure, well, that's an artifact, and so you deal that much damage to each opponent depending on how many treasure tokens you're creating. So I could definitely see this being run in a deck with, say, Bootlegger Stash from Straits New Capenna. I could see it being run with the Ancient Copper Dragon, where every time it hits an opponent, you roll a d20 and create that many treasure tokens. So I could definitely see this being very good in terms of cards that you should run. As a common especially, this could be a thing that powers your deck. Next we have an Inspired Tiefling, 5-mana sorcery. Exile the top 3 cards of your library, and until the end of your next turn, you may play them, and he also creates you 3 treasure tokens. So you get 3 treasure tokens to help you pay for these things that are off the top of your library. And that's pretty good. 5 mana though is quite a bit, so you're not playing it this turn. It's a really slow spell. It's almost like card draw, but slower. So I don't know. Next we have the Insufferable Balladeer. This is a 2-mana 2/1 Dwarf Bard. It has Vicious Mockery. Whenever it enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls cannot block this turn and is goaded. It has to hit somebody, and it's not going to hit you. I like it. This is a cute card to run. I'll be honest, I don't think it's a good card, but I do think this is really cute. 2 mana, 2/1's not good enough for the stat line, but it's a really fun card. Next, we have the Javelin of Lightning. It's a 2 mana artifact equipment. It has flash. It equips for 4 mana. So that if you're doing it for flash, it's like 6 mana, right? Whenever it enters the battlefield, you attach it to target creature you control. Okay, so it's just 2 mana immediately equips. That's good. And as long as it's your turn, the equipped creature gets +2 its power and first strike. So you would flash it in on your turn. That's not bad. First strike is good. It sucks that it's only on your turn, though. So I don't know. Maybe it's not all that good of a card. But I don't know. I have mixed feelings on this one. Next, we have Patron of the Arts, a 3 mana 3/1 Dragon Noble. Whenever this enters the battlefield or dies, you create a treasure token. Okay, so over time it pays for itself enough to where it's a 1 mana 3/1. But the problem is it's over time. You want the treasure tokens to mean more, as once again. So I'm not really sure I think this is that good of a card. Next, we have the Reckless Barbarian, a 2 mana 2/2 Dragon Barbarian, and if you sacrifice it, you get 2 red mana. So it pays for itself at some point, and you can do that whenever you need to. Okay, I guess that's okay. It's not exciting, but it almost makes me feel like, well, why not just spend that mana somewhere else then? But okay. Next, we have Shiny Impetus. This is a 3 mana enchantment aura. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and is goaded, as the other impetuses also do. Whenever the enchanted creature attacks, though, you get to create a treasure token. That's a little bit more useful than the other ones, so that's not terrible. Next, we have Stirring Bard, a 4 mana 0/4 Dragon Bard. It has Defender, and whenever it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. And it also has Mantle of Inspiration, where you tap it, target creature gains Menace and Haste until the end of the turn. That's not too bad. I think that could be a better card for 4 mana. I'm not really excited about it, because it itself doesn't have Haste, so you can't use its tap ability until your next turn. So, but I think that it's probably too slow of a card. I like the Barbarian flavor, but I think this one's probably too slow. Next, we have the Swashbuckler Extraordinaire, a 3 mana 2/2 Dragon Rogue Warrior that whenever it enters the battlefield, you get a treasure token, and whenever you attack, you may sacrifice 1 or more treasures, and when you do, up to that many target creatures gain double strike until the end of the turn. That's some good treasure synergy. I think that's an auto-include into a treasure deck for sure. Next, we have the Taunting Kobold, 1 mana 0/1 with haste. Whenever it attacks, goad target creature an opponent controls. It literally can deal no damage, but you're goading someone anyways. Yeah, that's about right for a Kobold. But I don't think that this is worthwhile to run. Next, we have the Tavern Brawler, a 3 mana background. Commander creatures you control have, at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. This creature gets +X power until the end of the turn, X being that card's mana cost, and you can still play that card this turn. Okay, yeah, it's okay, I guess. Definitely utilizing whatever's around him, so that's why he's picking up a chair here, I can see that. Next, we have Tiamat's Fanatics, a 5 mana 4/3 Dragon Warrior. It has haste, and it has Myriad. Yeah, okay, that's a good card. 5 mana, 4/3 attacks everybody. Yeah, that's good. Next, we have the Warehouse Thief, a 4 mana 4/2 Tiefling Rogue. For 2 mana, you tap and sacrifice an artifact or creature. Exile the top card of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play that card. I think it's probably too slow for 4 mana. Next, we have Wild Magic Surge, a 2 mana instant. Destroy target permanent an opponent controls. Its controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a permanent card that shares a card type with that permanent. They put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. I like this card. It sucks that it has to be an opponent, though. It would be really cool if it was 2 mana destroy target permanent, and then its controller reveals cards from the top of their library, because you could essentially upgrade one of your own cards doing that. But, oh well. Next, we have the Wrathful Red Dragon, a 5 mana 5/5 dragon with flying, and whenever a dragon you control is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any target that isn't a dragon. Yeah, that's a good dragon. 5 mana 5/5 is better than the 6 mana ones we're used to seeing, and it does passive stuff, which is even better. So this is the dragon I think that is always worthwhile to run. Finally, we have You've Been Caught Stealing, a 2 mana sorcery. Choose one of 2 effects. Either threaten the merchant and each creature blocks this turn if able, or bribe the guards. You create a treasure token for each opponent who is dealt damage this turn. Alright, that's pretty good. And that's it for our red cards. That moves us to green. And we're going to start off strong with the Ambitious Dragonborn, a 4 mana 0/0 Dragon Barbarian. When it enters the battlefield, it enters with X +1/+1 counters, X being the greatest power among creatures you control, and creature cards that are in your graveyard. Yeah, this could definitely enter with being pretty strong, especially in a dragon deck. Next, we have the Ancient Bronze Dragon. This is a 7-mana, 7/7 Elder Dragon with flying. Whenever this deals combat damage to a player, roll a d20, and when you do, put X +1/+1 counters on each of up to 2 target creatures, X being the result of that d20 roll. That is a strong card, to be sure. I like it. Next, we have Band Together, a 3-mana instant, up to 2 target creatures you control, each deal damage equal to their power to another target creature. Combos really well with Death Touch. I think this is a good card. Next, we have Barroom Brawl, a 2-mana sorcery. Target creature you control fights target creature the opponent to your left controls. Then that player may copy the spell and may choose new targets for the copy. So it just keeps going. I love it. Until someone finally stops choosing to copy the spell, it can keep going. I love this card. It almost ends up being a board wipe if it keeps going. Yeah, I mean, this is a card that you include until you realize how bad it is, because it's just so fun. Next, we have the Carefree Swine Master. This is a 3-mana 1/4 Gnome Ranger, because who else? Whenever this attacks, you may pay 2 mana, and if you do, create a 2/2 green boar creature token that is tapped and attacking. Okay, I think the fact that you have to pay mana for that ability makes this too slow, though, but it is a really fun and flavorful card. We have Circle the Land Druid, that's next. 2-mana 1/1 Gnome Druid. When it enters the battlefield, you may mill 4 cards. And it has natural recovery. Whenever this dies, return target land card from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, that's not too bad. Not exciting, but not too bad. Next, we have the Colossal Badger, a 6-mana 6/5 Badger that when it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. But it can go on an adventure at sorcery speed. For 2 mana, it digs deep. Choose target creature. Mill 4 cards. Then put a +1/+1 counter on that creature for each creature card that was milled that way. Okay. Yeah, I think the card is probably too slow. It reminds me of the old school green cards you would see run very often. 6-mana 6/5 that you would just be like, oh, this is a really big card. It does big things. So it's good for a lot of the green spells they're trying to bring back, where you fight creatures, where you get stuff based on the highest power among creatures you control. I think that this is meant to... They're trying to speed this up with milling as well, so that way cards combo with creatures that have high power in your graveyard. But I think this card ends up... I think it's too slow. I don't think that strategy is the way to go. I think you're going to stick with dragons if you go green, but we'll see. Speaking of dragons, though, we do talk about the Draconic Muralists, a 4-mana 4/3 dragon bard that whenever it dies, you may search your library for a dragon card, reveal it, and put it in your hand, then shuffle. Yeah, that's a good card, for sure. Alright, this is going to be kind of hard to read, so bear with me. This is Druid of the Emerald Grove, a 4-mana 2/2 dwarf druid that whenever it enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal them, and then roll a d20. On a 1-9, you put those cards in your hand, then shuffle. On a 10-19, you put one on the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, then shuffle. On a nat 20, you put them both on the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. I feel like a nat 20, this nat 20 doesn't feel like a nat 20. I feel like a nat 20, you put them both on the battlefield, then shuffle, not tapped. I understand it not coming in tapped, them coming in not tapped is a big deal. But when you nat 20 in D&D, it's a real big deal. And this just kind of feels like, oh cool, I'm mana ramped, which is really cool. I'm mana ramped twice, which is really good for 4 mana. But I just feel like if you're going to make it a nat 20 roll, you go hard. But alright, moving on. Next we have the Earthquake Dragon. This is a 15-mana 10/10 elemental dragon that costs X less to cast, X being the total mana value of dragons that you control. It is flying, it is trample, and for 3 mana and you sacrifice a land, you return this from your graveyard right back to your hand. This is what a powerful dragon that we're looking at right now, and doesn't the art do it justice, where there's rubble rock that looks like it's coming out of the earth that forms its wings. I mean, this is just a gigantic creature. Has no flavor text, needs no flavor text. This thing speaks for itself. Holy crap. Okay, in case we all hate ourselves, we can explore the Underdark for 5 mana. This is a sorcery. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and or gate cards, and put them onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle, and then you take the initiative. Wow, that is a great card, because you can search the library for up to 2 basic land cards, and for 2 gate cards. So that's 4 cards. Gate cards are lands also. So you're getting 4 cards for 5 mana, and there are 4 cards that you want out of your deck. Maybe you want them in your hand right away, but even if you don't, you're taking them out of your deck so you don't have to draw them again. So that's really good. And you get to take the initiative. Really good in dungeon delving. Alright, next we have the Giant Ankeg. I can never pronounce that right. Ankeg? Onkeg. A Giant Onkeg. I'm glad to see one of these things. This is an 8 mana, 8/8 insect with trample. It has ward 2, but here's the best part. Other creatures you control have trample and ward 2. This is a auto-include into one of my other decks I run that's not a Commander, unfortunately, deck, but I definitely think this card goes really well in a Dragon deck. It goes well, and if Worm decks were a thing in Commander, it would go good in that. But this is a good card for green especially. Giving everything ward 2, even if the trample becomes irrelevant. Imagine protecting all of your dragons, and they all have ward 2. And you still get an 8/8 for 8 mana that has trample and ward 2 on its own. You're not paying 8 mana for an enchantment, gives your creatures trample and ward 2. You're paying 8 mana for a creature that's an 8/8, trample, ward 2, and it gives everything else you own, trample and ward 2. This is an amazing, I think this is a great card. And it's not mythic rare, it's just uncommon. It's not even rare. So, I think this is a great card. Next we have the, oh joy, I'm not going to pronounce this right either, the Myconid? Myconid Spore Tender. A 4 mana 4/1 fungus that has infesting spores. When Myconid Spore Tender enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. Okay, and you expect that for about 2 mana instant speed, so you're getting it slower than instant speed for 4 mana, and you get a 4/1 out of it. It's really easy to kill a 4/1. I don't know. I think that it would make a lot more sense if it did it on enter the battlefield and when it died. I think that would make a lot more sense. I think it would be more thematic as well for something that gives out spores. But that's not what they chose to go with, so I think this card is probably not good. Okay, next we have the Overwhelming Encounter. This is a 5 mana sorcery. Creatures you control gain vigilance and trample until the end of the turn. Roll a d20. On a 1 to 9, creatures you control also will get +2/+2. On a 10 to 19, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. If you nat 20, put 4 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. And that's in addition to the vigilance, that's in addition to the trample. See, now this is a nat 20. This is what I'm talking about, Wizards of the Coast. Come on. So this is a good card. For 5 mana, giving everything vigilance and trample, and then buffing them is good. Permanently buffing them is even better. I think you play this. This is one of the first sorceries that I see that makes you roll a d20 that you play, even though the 1 to 9 isn't all that good. You're playing this because you specifically want to roll a 10 or higher. But I think it's worth it. This really makes you feel like D&D, where a bad roll can really not do you so great. It'll help you this turn, but then your next turn you're kind of screwed. But if you buff them all permanently, they had vigilance, they had trample, you're hurting whoever you're attacking, which is great. And what you're doing is you're making it to where when your opponent's not going to attack you either, because these creatures you control are permanently buffed. So that's really good. I don't think you run this in a dragon deck, but maybe. Next we have the Owlbear Shepherd, a 3 mana 1/4 goblin druid. At the beginning of your end step, if creatures you control have total power 8 or greater, you get to draw a card. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's good in a token deck, and it's good in a big deck anyway, so they both combo together. The fact that this card goes well in 2 different kinds of decks, I think makes this a good card. So you definitely want to run this. And it's always good to see Owlbears in D&D. Next we have Poison the Blade. For 2 mana as an instant, I think we've seen this one before. Target creature gains Death Touch until end of turn, and you get to draw a card. So, it's a good card. Next we have Predatory Impetus, a 5 mana enchantment. You enchant a creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3, must be blocked if able, and is goaded. It's a great way to threaten your opponents without you yourself attacking them. Next we have Saddle of the Cavalier, a 3 mana artifact equipment. It equips for 3 mana. The equipped creature will get +3/+3 and cannot be blocked by creatures with power 3 or less. Okay. I think this... Oddly enough, I think you put this on one of your Ancient Dragons that when they deal combat damage to a player, you roll a d20 and do crazy stuff, but I think it's too expensive an equipment to do that with, and they already have flying, which makes it less likely they'll be blocked anyways, so, I don't really think this fits super well. Alright, next we have the Geld Nurturer, a 2 mana, 0/2 Dragon Druid that can tap and add a green mana. And when you spend this mana to cast a dragon's creature spell, you gain 2 life. That's cute to run in a dragon deck, why not? And it's always good to have low drops too, that you can get out because they'll help defend. Next we go with Traverse the Outlands for 5 mana. This is sorcery that searches your library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control, and put those cards onto the battlefield tap, and then shuffle. Well, that's a really good mana ramp. It's for 5 mana though, so odds are you don't really need that much more mana ramp, but some of these Elder Dragons and such, they're 7 mana. And they don't pay for themselves, so I can definitely see this being a worthwhile journey to go on in order to help find those dragons. Next, we have the Underseller Myconid, a 3 mana 1/2 fungus that whenever it enters the battlefield or dies, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token, and then you can tap this creature for 1 mana of any color. That's a okay card, I guess. I mean, mana dorks are nice, so it's a mana ramp, kind of, for a creature. I like it. Next, we have the Undermountain Adventurer for 4 mana. It's a 3/4 giant warrior with vigilance. When he enters the battlefield, you take the initiative, and if you tap him, you get 2 green mana. And if you've completed a dungeon, instead, you get 6 green mana when you tap him. Yeah, this is really good in a dungeon delving deck for sure. And then finally, you meet in a tavern for 4 mana. It's a sorcery. Choose one. You can choose to form a party or start a band. You can choose to start a party or start a brawl. So if you form a party while you're in this tavern, you get to look at the top 5 cards of your library, reveal any number of creatures from among them, and put them into your hand. You'll put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. However, you can also choose to start a brawl, and creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. Okay, I like that. That's really flavorful too. And that moves us to our multicolored cards. That's it for green. Alright, we have Minthara the Merciless Soul, a 4 mana, 2 generic, 1 white, 1 black, 2/2 legendary elf cleric. It has Ward X. She has Ward X, where X is the number of experience counters you have. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, you get an experience counter. Creatures you control have +1 power for each experience counter you have. Wow, that's an interesting mechanic too. I like that card a lot. I definitely think this would be good, and even as, I think probably as a commander you could run this. Your commander having Ward is just always really strong, so that's really good. Next we have Nira Wild Mage, a 6 mana 4 generic 1 blue 1 red, 2/7 legendary human elf shaman. Whenever you cast a spell, you may put it on the bottom of its owner's library, and if you do, reveal cards from the top of your library until you revealed a non-land card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, but this ability will only trigger once each turn. That's a cool way to upgrade a spell. You cast a spell you don't really need right away. Use her ability to, instead of resolving the spell, put it on the bottom of your library and cast something else for free. It's really good. And it looks like that does it for all our multicolored cards, actually. Just the 2. So that'll move us to our artifact cards. We'll start with the Bag of Holding, a 1 mana artifact. Whenever you discard a card, you exile it from your graveyard. If you tap 2 mana and tap this, you draw a card, then discard a card. And again, every time you discard a card, instead it's exiled from your graveyard. If you tap 4 mana and tap this and sacrifice it, you return all cards that have been exiled with Bag of Holding to their owner's hand. That's a really good card. It's like card draw, where every card you discarded actually didn't have to get discarded. Then we have Bronze Walrus, a 3 mana 2/2 artifact creature walrus. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you scry 2, and you can tap it to add a mana of any color. So it's a mana raw creature. Alright, I like it. I like me and my walrus. Now we have the, wow, this is a weird one, Shardolin Dragon, a 6 mana 4/4 artifact dragon that has flying. Okay, so nothing crazy. It's about what you'd expect for a dragon. Then we have Cloak of the Bat, a 2 mana artifact equipment. It equips for 2 mana, and the equipped creature gets flying and haste. Okay. Also, it's good that it gives it flying, and it's good to give it haste, so I think maybe that could be good. Next, we have the Clockwork Fox, a 3 mana 3/2 artifact fox. Whenever it leaves the battlefield, you draw 2 cards, and each opponent draws a card. Okay, and it incentivizes your opponents to remove it so you can get that card draw, so that's not bad. 3 mana, draw 2, but all of your opponents draw 1 is probably not good still, but I see it. Then we have the Decanter of Endless Water, a 3-mana artifact that says you have no maximum hand size, and it taps for a mana of any color. It's a mana rock that is also giving you no max hand size. That's a really good card. Next we have the Dire Mimic, a 2-mana artifact treasure. It is flash, and if you tap it, sacrifice it, add a mana of any color. But if you tap 3 mana, then this becomes a shapeshifter artifact creature with base power and toughness 5/5 until the end of the turn. Yeah, dire indeed. So I can definitely see that being one. It's like a vehicle that blocks when you least expect it. So you could, for 5 mana, you could, because it has flash, for 5 mana, when your opponents attack you, pay 2 mana to have this enter the battlefield, and then 3 mana to shapeshift it immediately to then block. So I can definitely see this being a worthwhile card. Still, though, I feel like a little slow, but I like this, especially because it's a treasure, and that keyword means something for some synergy in this set, so that might be relevant. Next, we have the Gate Colossus, an 8-mana 8/8 artifact construct. It costs 1 less to cast for each gate that you control, and it cannot be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, so it's an anti-token deck. That's good. And whenever a gate enters the battlefield under your control, you may put Gate Colossus from your graveyard on top of your library. Every time a new gate comes into play, it has something new to protect. I like that. Speaking of little constructs here, we move on to a Golem, the Geode Golem, a 5-mana 5/3 artifact golem with trample that whenever this deals combat damage to a player, you may cast your commander from the command zone without paying its mana cost. However, you still pay any additional cost. That would be the mana, that would be the tax on it. Yeah, this is a good card. I like that. Then we have the Lantern of Revealing, a 3-mana artifact that can tap for a mana of any color, but it can also tap 4 mana, tap this, look at the top card of your library, and if it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. If you don't put the card onto the battlefield, you may instead put it on the bottom of your library. So it's scrying that does a little bit extra. I like that. Next we have the Marching Duodrone, a 2-mana 2/2 artifact construct that when it attacks, each player creates a treasure token. So it just keeps helping each other. I like that. That's nice. Not a very good card. Next we have the Marut, an 8-mana 7/7 artifact construct with trample that when it enters the battlefield, if mana from a treasure was spent to cast it, create a treasure token for each mana from a treasure that was spent to cast it. So it just replaces all the treasure that was used for it. I like that. Next we have the Navigation Orb, a 3-mana artifact, a 2-mana tap and sacrifice it, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and or gate cards, reveal them, put them on the battlefield tapped, and the other into your hand and shuffle. Yeah, this is a good card. It's nice that these things keep helping you pull lands and gates, because gates are lands, so that's really cool. Next we have the Nimble Right Schematic, a 2-mana artifact that whenever it enters the battlefield, or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you get a 1/1 construct artifact creature token. It's just a little cute thing, I like it. Then we have the Patrier's Seal, a 3-mana artifact that can tap for a mana of any color, or tap 1 mana and tap it to untap a legendary creature you control. Also really good. Then we have the Pilgrim's Eye, a 3-mana artifact Thopter, 1/1 with flying, that when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Okay, not bad. Then we have the Prize Statue, a 2-mana artifact that when it enters the battlefield or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you get a treasure token. I don't know. That doesn't seem all that good. Then we have the Prophetic Prism, a 2-mana artifact that when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and if you tap 1 mana and tap it, add 1 mana of any color. That's pretty typical for prisms. It just transforms mana of one color into mana of another color if you need it to, or even colorless into a colored one. Then we have the Stone Speaker Crystal, a 4-mana artifact. It taps for 2 mana that is colorless, and if you tap it and if you tap 2 mana, tap it and sacrifice it, you can exile any number of target players' graveyards and draw a card. Wow, this is a definite strong card. I can see this being used in just about any deck. Then we have the Universal Solvent, a 1-mana artifact. It taps is for 7 mana. You tap it and sacrifice it to destroy target permanent. Wow, I think that's pretty pricey, but maybe I'm missing something. I like the card. I just feel like maybe it's a little pricey. All right, and finally for the artifacts, and I think for just in general, but I'll look over some of the lands, see what we have. We have the Vexing Puzzle Box, a 3-mana artifact. This is a mythic rare. Whenever you roll 1 or more dice, put a number of charge counters onto this puzzle box that is equal to the result of that die roll. If you tap this, you can add a mana of any color and roll a d20, so this can keep giving itself its own charge counters. That's nice. If you tap this and remove 100 charge counters from it, search your library for an artifact card and put that card on the battlefield and shuffle. Which is really good because the puzzle box isn't sacrificed to do that, so you can keep doing that every time you get to 100 charge counters. That's really good. I could see this being put into a deck that is meant to be D&D themed, or rolling a lot of d20s, because that's the kind of deck I would want to run. Looking at some of the lands here, I can already see a couple new ones here. We already talked about Baulder's Gate, but we also have Basilisk Gate. It is a land gate that taps for a colorless mana. If you tap 2 mana, tap it. Target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, X being the number of gates you control. You must only do this as a sorcery. We have the Black Dragon Gate. It enters the battlefield tapped, and as it enters, you choose a color other than black. And if you tap it, you add a black or 1 mana of the chosen color. You may have already talked about that one. And then we have a couple other ones. So that's the Black Dragon Gate. The Citadel Gate is that, but for white, and then the mana of chosen color. Cliff Gate, red, and a mana of the chosen color. So each of these, we do the Gond Gate, which is, it enters the battlefield untapped. No, it says gates you control enter the battlefield untapped. Okay, so the Gond Gate, gates you control enter the battlefield untapped. Tap it to add a colorless mana, or tap it to add a mana of any color that a gate you control would produce. Okay, that's really good. The Heap Gate. Tap it for a colorless mana. Tap 1 mana, tap this, add a mana of any color. Tap a mana, tap this, and tap an untapped gate you control. Create a treasure token. Okay. That being said, we have a few other dual land stuff coming back that enter the battlefield untapped should a certain condition be met, but I think those are not relevant to go over here. That does it for all the card reveals that we have for today. We'll see you on the pre-release, or your LGS will. Either way, until next time, later gamers.